YouTubers, welcome. I am super excited to introduce you to our next guest. Many of you already know him. This is the globally recognized mind, body, health and wellness expert, mindful trainer, meditation teacher, author of Sacred Powers and De-Stressifying. Our guest is also credited with creating the 21-day meditation process, which has spawned thousands to take up meditation. And that was all after a 20-year career in business, in finance, in mergers and acquisitions. It's Davidji. Hi, Davidji.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
So great to be with you today. Thanks for inviting me to hang out with you for a little bit.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Delighted to have you here. Now, Davidji, we've heard the professional lineup. We know, from 20 years ago, how you moved into this space to enlighten us beings. But what about your childhood? Was there anything in your childhood that pointed to what you're doing now?
Well, my mother was a very free spirit. She was an artist. She was a painter and a sculptor. So she was a little more open to a lot of things. She believed heavily in astrology. She believed every once in a while we would break out the Ouija board and we would, do the Ouija board thing. And she always encouraged me to journey and to explore and to have fun. And she was very supportive. I was a little bit of a wild child, we would call those, a horrible child, causing, getting into trouble a lot and, things along those lines. And she always encouraged me just to keep following my heart. So, so I guess that's been woven through me. And she died when I was relatively young. And I was really very, very quickly able to integrate. She's here right now, I would say. And so I don't miss her. Yeah, I've never missed her. Because in that moment that she died, I integrated her fully into every aspect of my being. So she's always like a little reminder: keep trusting, trust your heart, keep going, keep doing that. And so my father was the opposite. My father was very strict, and always was quick to pull off the belt to scold or spank me or whatever. And I'm really close to him now. He lives on the other side of the country. And it's funny, I miss him a lot, and he's 3,000 miles away from me, but I don't miss my mom. So I think that really her influence, her creativity, she's really a powerful, Shakti energy, divine feminine archetype that I always have with me.
Fabulous. Now, you've gone on to train very deeply, not just meditation, but yoga, many of the esoteric sciences. You ran the Chopra Center in LA for many years. So this path that you've gone on, very, very, very deep spiritual path. Now, through all of the content that you've trained in professionally, is there anything in conventional alternative wisdom which suggests you shouldn't do it, but you found is right for you?
Oh, well, I would think that there's a lot. My philosophy has always been to I get sucked into things. I'm pretty enthusiastic. So when someone says, "Hey, there's this thing," I'm like, "Cool, let's check it out." So I'm quick to accept whether the most kooky alternative things that exist. But I've also I'm pretty skeptical as well. So because I'm from New York. So New Yorks are just natural skeptics. We roll our eyes at most things. But there's a lot. Even in Ayurveda, there's some stuff that I was like, I love that. That's so spot on, and that's timeless wisdom. And this other thing, I would even say within the context of Ayurveda, you know, having really been influenced very heavily by Deepak Chopra, who's a board certified physician, you know, an endocrinologist, and his partner of 20 years, David Simon, a neurologist. You know, they were really, you know, as a combo, really this magnificent fusion of modern Western science combined with the healing arts of the timeless wisdom of those healing arts. And, you know, they always encouraged me to, you know, navigate both worlds. And so one of, you know, an important tenet is we should always go to the source, not the symptom. And yet I see, you know, so much of Ayurveda, how it's practiced in India and certainly in the West, is very allopathic. It's like, oh, you can't sleep, take this herb. Oh, your joints hurt you, take this herb. Oh, you know, so very similar to modern Western science, which is, oh, you can't sleep, take this drug. Oh, your joints hurt you, take this drug. And so I don't embrace the, you know, obviously if my joints hurt, I'm gonna start taking curcumin or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I'm always going for the holistic solution, which is like, oh, you can't sleep? Probably you should meditate. Oh, you can't sleep? Probably you should turn off the TV and not have it on till 1 o'clock in the morning, or things along those lines. So there's a lot of dogma in the ancient teachings, and I think that was necessary to help people, you know, understand the boundaries of, you know, like, you know, you can travel, you know, there's some latitude, but if you're going to really convince people that this path is the appropriate path, sometimes there are a lot of rules and regulations. And I'm not big on dogma. I'm big on dogs, but I'm not big on dogma. And so anytime I've touched a teaching, whether it's a certain school of meditation or a certain lineage of ancient wisdom, if there's a rule, rather than blindly follow it, I'll be like, well, why? Like what I was taught, you know, by Deepak and the Maharishi said the same thing, and, you know, so many people in the TM, you know, organization believe that, and it's like, don't meditate with your pet. And I understand foundationally where that could have come from several thousand years ago. If you have, like, you know, an untrained dog hanging out in your house, it's going to bark, it's going to run around, it's going to be, you know, whatever. So I understand that, but, you know, I have meditated with my companion animal for a solid decade. Peaches, the Buddha princess, of course, and you can follow her on social media as well. And I've loved those meditations. I've loved connecting with her in stillness and silence. So I guess, you know, I sort of shy away from any fundamentalist kind of guidance. But, you know, when we look at, like, Ayurveda at its core, modern Western science says health is the, you know, absence of disease, which is why so many people have undiagnosed problems in their life, because they're like, well, there's no disease that we can see, so you must be okay. And Ayurveda has always said, no, that's not what health is. Health is emotional and physical balance and integration. And so, like, wow, that's the path that I'm on. So as I navigate, you know, interesting journeys in various ancient teachings, anytime it's like, thou shalt, you know, suddenly when there's a 10 commandments suddenly gets introduced into the process, my first response is to question it and go like, well, why are we doing that? An example is, you know, in meditation, every school of meditation says you must sit with a rigid spine. You must sit straight and with a rigid spine.
Yeah.
And what I have found is that, and of course, as an advanced technique, yes, we know that that's better for you. You're going to be more aligned. The energy will flow more easily. Your meditation will probably be more expansive. But most of the people that I'm teaching are people who have struggled with a meditation practice in the past, or forget to meditate, or think they don't have the time. You know, we can go, you know, all the reasons that people don't do that. So when someone says, well, I need to sort of like lean back a little bit, or I need to like sit in this chair or this couch or lay down because I have a, you know, a herniated disc or something like that. My response, you know, there was a time when I was like, oh no, rigid spine. You must sit with a rigid spine. But now I realize if I'm going to get them to meditate, let me make it as comfortable as possible. And if you do that for 6 months, then come back and I'll say, okay, yeah, I think you're ready for a rigid spine or hand mudras or things along those lines. So I think that what we have to realize, you know, you're an expert. You know, I would like to think that, you know, I'm heavily studied in this area, and most of the people we encounter are not. So, you know, if I was talking to you, of course, we'd be sitting with rigid spines, you know, and if we were hanging out, you know, we would go to the thing that is the advanced teaching. But when someone's just dabbling or dipping their toe in or coming up with excuses why they can't meditate or whatever, I've tried to say, well, what's the way that I can sort of transcend any of those rules and actually get them to show up? You know, if you show up, you know, that's all I care about. Show up. If you want to lay down, fine. You know, after a couple of months, when you realize every time you lay down to meditate, you're falling asleep, then we can talk about that. And then we can say, okay, well, how about we elevate your spine just a little bit? Yeah. So I think, you know, I look at all the various teachings, and there's such magnificent wisdom. And we have to realize, you know, that, you know, India, you know, just happens to be the source of so much timeless wisdom, you know, whether it's yoga or Ayurveda or meditation, or even, you know, just the translated teachings of the Gita. But I think everything with a grain of salt, and everything, for me, my mantra with people is whatever works.
Yeah, no,
whatever works.
Yeah, and yes, similar, much more gentler approach. And you know, I feel if you take the joy out of it, it actually makes it quite difficult for somebody to commit and actually integrate the practice. Now, you've actually trained 200,000 people to meditate, and you've certified 1,000 meditation teachers. So how does your approach to training meditation teachers, meditation students, how has it changed over the years?
Well, you know, it's funny. At first, I was a lot more rigid.
Yeah.
I was like,
I think that's part of the path.
Yeah, and I was like, you know, here's how you do it. And, you know, and when people would say, but no, you don't understand, I would say, then either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. You know, we've all met gurus who are more like that, and we've all met teachers who are, you know, a bit more relaxed about it. When I first began to teach meditation, you know, I actually taught it like, well, here's how you do it. And I was a lot more rigid. And as I've had the opportunity for people to then give me feedback, you know, because it's not just like training, you know, thousands of people, it's getting the, you know, like what's working from those thousands and thousands of people. And I think that has really, becoming a better listener has made me a better teacher. And I wasn't really listening in my early stages. I was just presenting. And now I'll walk into a room, and whether there's 50 people or 500 people, before I even start talking, you know, I'll try to find out who's in the room. You know, like, what are your issues? What are you trying to accomplish? And then based on that, if they're very experienced, then it's one conversation. If they're all newbies, then it's another conversation. If they're very, very rigid, then I won't use Sanskrit. You know, if they're very secular, or, you know, when I'm working with cops or very serious people in the corporate world, I'm not busting out lines from the Gita. You know, and I'm not talking of, you know, and I don't refer to things like, oh, the universe will provide, you know, things along those lines. I'll have conversations in a much more, how shall I say it? I've become more of a translator. So depending on who I'm speaking to, I'll try to speak their language. And I don't think that's inauthentic, no differently than if you and I went to Japan and we didn't speak Japanese, and, you know, just speaking louder wouldn't get our point across. We'd have to either find someone who spoke English or we'd have to learn to speak Japanese. And so I'm always trying to find out, like, what's the language that's being spoken in this group of people or in this room?
Yeah.
Is it a very secular approach? Are they open to ancient wisdom in its most original format? You know, and so that has, you know, at first I would have said, you know, too bad if you don't get what I'm saying, then you're not ready. And now I try to make myself readier for whoever's showing up.
And there was actually this, I was listening to a podcast, and this lady, she was talking about, she talked about, she's a psychotherapist, and she was talking about four levels of growth, and that most of us stay at that material level, even though we might dip our toe into meditation. We kind of use it because we're a bit stressed, and then we stop again. And then it's only really those that break through, that start to then ask themselves more psychological questions, that, you know, that you really start to break through to the deep benefits of the meditative process. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, I think it's a question of who's in the room. You know, I live in California, which, you know, probably in the United States is probably the land of yoga. You know, that's our land. You know, that's you know, the most amount of people practicing yoga. You know, there are meditation studios here. There's a yoga studio on every single corner. Paramahansa Yogananda, when he came to the United States, he didn't stop in New York. He came to California. You know, and so we have those. You know, his self-realization fellowships are probably about 10 miles away. Is the place where he wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, right down in Encinitas. So like I'm exposed a lot, you know, and I work with corporations and people who are wearing three-piece suits, and you know, they struggle with just even seeing someone who looks like me teaching them about anything because they think it's some like kind of hippie thing. It's not hippie. I just never cut my hair after 9/11, so that's, you know, that's
Hey,
my
you
answer.
don't need to now. There's so many beards. Okay.
Right. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew that beards would be a thing even?
It really was.
You know. So I think that, you know, again, it comes back to, I love being in a room where people are like, teach us about Ayurveda and teach us what Ayurveda means and what are the doshas and what are the Mahabhutas, you know, and like, you know, I love being in a space like that. But I also love, it challenges me to be in a room where I know I'm not going to mention Sanskrit at all. I'm not going to mention, you know, anything Ayurvedic, but I'll figure out how can I share, you know, Ayurveda. So if I'm sitting in a room with police officers, you know, I'll say, you know, some of you are air-based. Some of you are very fiery. Raise your hand if you're very fiery. And like in a room full of cops, you know, they're all fiery. You know, how many of you are like earth-based? And like nobody's a kapha in the room. You know, so it's interesting, you know, like I understand like who am I speaking to here and what's the conversation. But I wouldn't say pitta, you know, and I wouldn't talk about Sanskrit, but I'll say like, well, here are some really cool techniques that you can use to sort of ease your fire. You know, and I wouldn't even use meditation, you know, well, in the past I wouldn't use meditation. It's becoming a little more, you know, but I would say let's connect to that stillness inside of us, you know, so that we can slow the world down a little bit. And, you know, I even branded it as mindful performance. So, you know, awareness training, mindful performance. There are so many euphemisms that we could use to talk to people who otherwise would be a little, sounds like you're going to try to trick me into a cult or something like that.
That's it. The language is key, isn't it? Now, so, Davidji, we have this virus around us globally.
Yeah.
And it's attacking us all on a material level. So that's in how we can meet up with our nearest and dearest and our loved ones, how we're earning our income, what work looks like. So all of that is affected. Challenging. How can we, I mean, what are your thoughts on the current pandemic? How can we feel positive about all of this? How do we learn to let go? Do we let go?
Yeah, well, these are interesting times, and it's so funny. Not the pandemic and not the dying, of course, but you know, it's just so interesting. When this first came down, I saw this as, the universe delivering us a giant pattern interrupt, a break in the action. And I also believe that we have all been praying and meditating and setting intentions and begging for this for most of our lives. Everybody, probably at least 1,000 to 10,000 times has said, I wish things would just slow down. I wish I could just get a break from work. I wish I could just sit in my house and breathe without thinking that work is coming down on me and like all this other stuff is coming down on me. Or we've said, there's so much pollution on this planet. I wish all the cars would just stop, or I wish all the smokestacks would stop belching out smoke. Like we've all said that. We've all said this. So I believe in the power of the collective, and I believe we all collectively, co-conspired to create this pattern interrupt. And so, but people resisted it at first so much because it was so deadly and dangerous. But, pretty much it was like, stay in your house, don't go outside, don't connect to anybody new, social distance, and we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. And, I think when we look at our world leaders, whether they were Boris Johnson, whether they were Donald Trump, whether they were Angela Merkel, whether they were President Modi, like you can just keep going on, on and on for like who's the, no one knew anything. No one knew anything. They were guessing too. Everybody was just trying to figure it out. And I think so at a certain level, I think, we're always looking for like a mommy or daddy figure to tell us, like, everything will be okay, and here's what's going on. But honestly, even now, 3 months into this, none of us have that figure. And so for the very first times in our lives, without having this father figure or mother figure nourishing us or guiding us, we've sort of had to like try to figure stuff out on our own. The big picture figuring out on our own, because we've always, taken cues from like, that's why we elected a strong leader. That's who Maggie Thatcher was, like that whole kind of thing. That's who, like Barack Obama, what would he do in this moment? And the reality is that everybody, is just trying to figure it out one day at a time. And so I think that we started to get a little, we resisted it at first, even though we had been praying for it for decades. And then we sort of got a little cabin fever. I don't know if you have that expression in England, sort of like, you start clawing at the walls, especially here in the States where people were sealed in with their kids.
Yeah.
And suddenly they had to become the teachers of their kids and do the child care and do their jobs and do everything else. And then we all learned to like do virtual stuff on Zoom. And it's so funny that, at least here in the States, there are actually riots going on here in the States in front of like the governor mansions and, in front of our elected officials, like, stop making us wear masks, stop sealing us in our rooms. So we're having like the backlash, the pendulum swinging the other way here in the States with people revolting against, they're saying it's my right to walk around without a mask or to play in the park or to go to the beach. And so entitled. Oh my God, it's just so pathetic. But it's sort of like, but wait, you prayed for this thing, and you couldn't even handle it for a month and a half. It was, and I get it. People got sick, and people suddenly weren't able to generate money, and so like I understand that. I think we're over like 35 million people out of work here in the United States. That's like 10% of our, or more of our entire population, and we had been at like 3% for years. So it's so funny. The thing we prayed for, when it came, we resisted it, and then we didn't take advantage of it. And I was advising people, well, this is that moment. Learn a new language, learn to play an instrument, clean out your closets.
Yeah.
Do something, write a book, connect to those people that you ignore on a daily basis. You're trapped in a house with them. You might as well like pay attention to them. And here we are now begging to get back out.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just so interesting watching the human condition. And I don't know if we have another wave of this or not. You know, our expert here is this guy, Dr. Fauci. You know,
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci, he's like the, you know, and then in February, there's a video of him in February saying, don't worry, this is not going to impact the United States. Americans have nothing to fear. And so, like, yesterday's fool is today's expert, and today's, you know, genius is tomorrow's fool. And we just don't know. So I think this stage right now, this bubble right now, is that time to come back home to ourselves. A great line in the state of Texas. They elect judges there, and I guess about a month ago, the judge of Tyler, Texas, came out to talk to all his constituents, and he said, "You did not elect me to be your mother. You elected me to be your judge. So take care of yourself and trust yourself." And I would say, wow, that's what we need to do. We need to become a little bit more reliant on our own heart, on our own decisions, on our own, you know, what are we feeling, and not worry so much, because guess what? No one outside of us knows anything more. And they could claim, oh, I'm an infectious disease specialist, or I'm an epidemiologist, or I worked on this vaccine. Everyone's still just guessing. So, you know, a lot has been said about, like, this created so much uncertainty. We always live in an uncertain world. We've lived in an uncertain world since the day we were born. All of us could die at any moment. We never know what political winds are going to blow in or out. You know, you can't be clairvoyant about that Brexit was going to go down, or that Brexit was going to stop, or that, you know, like all of that stuff. Yeah. And so you suddenly start to realize, and you start to look around, we've always lived in an uncertain world. This is the new massive uncertainty.
Well, one of the things you talk a lot about is letting go of who you are. And I mean, really, I'd say it's at the heart of your ethos, having read your work. So with everything that's going on at the moment, you know, just the conceptually, and then also on the macro level, on the micro level, we're seeing these different personalities coming up, and we're seeing so many different people sharing information, and this exactly as you say, you know, who knows? We don't know at the end of the day. We've got to just go through the journey. But, you know, when we look at this energetically, this is a question I don't ask lightly, but are there negative emotions? Are there negative energies that as humans we are cultivated? You know, what is happening on that level, would you say, Davidji? And what can we do to let go?
Well, I believe that there are toxic emotions, and the Buddha talked about toxic emotions, and Vedanta has always, you know, talked about, you know, and what would we call a toxic emotion? That would be, you know, and emotions are real. You know, if I'm angry, it's a real emotion. It's valid, and it shouldn't just be wiped away. But what are you going to do with that anger? Are you going to drive it into yourself, and then, you know, and then damage yourself physically using these emotional toxicity? Dr. David Simon said that 90% of your physical toxicity is emotionally derived, and I believe that. So I believe that there are certain behaviors that are going to be non-nourishing. So if I was, let's say I took something personally, you know, someone said to me, "Really, that's your hairstyle?" And I took it very, very personally, and rather than just saying yeah and owning who I am or my impact or what I'm doing, instead I took it personally, and then I started second guessing. Oh, I probably should have cut my hair. Oh, I probably should have dyed it another color. Oh, I should have, you know, done this. Oh, I should have plucked those hairs. Oh, I should have, you know, like all this other stuff. And then I begin to ruminate in that negative emotion, because what's my emotion? You know, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling you know, these are all real aspects. So I could either get angry and say, "Who are you to talk to me about my hair?" Or I could drive it inward and be like, "Oh my God, my hairstyle is so stupid. I'm so insecure." I'm, you know, like all that. So I believe, you know, there are nourishing emotions that we have, you know, feeling grateful, you know, feeling compassion, feeling feeling self-compassion, acting kind, like these are all very, very nourishing things. Forgiving ourselves, these are really powerful, nourishing. And of course, there's these non-nourishing emotions. And the question is, which wolf are you going to feed? It really just comes down to, where do you want to put your attention in a given moment? Where am I going to, shall I go down that rabbit hole? And then for the next week, think about how, oh, my hair's stupid, and probably I sound like a fool when I talk, and all this other stuff. And then you just keep devolving, spiraling down. I don't believe in the concept of good or evil. I believe that's a brush that we paint a moment with, or a particular behavior with. Now we could translate that and say, well, that thing that you did, that really didn't serve a lot of people, but maybe on some level it served something else. We would look at the virus on the surface and say, oh my God, bad virus, killing hundreds of thousands of people. And for the other 7.4 billion people, opportunity to take stock, opportunity to really, to define in your life what's important. This could have been the Dharma moment for the planet. Sadly, probably it's not going to be. But we would have said, wow, an opportunity like this, it comes along once every 100 years or so. But most people didn't really seize it as an opportunity. You and I were chatting that we took advantage of this thing. We all learned to do Zoom. I at a higher level. I've been doing Zoom for a bunch of years, but God, I've gone so deep into the whole Zoom thing with doing live streams and doing polling and doing Q&As and doing breakout rooms and all sorts of things like that. So I think it allowed me to up my game. I did have greater intentions. I was going to put a lot more attention on learning Spanish, and maybe I did that 10 days out of 2 months, and I was like, ugh, that one slipped away from me. But I think that so I don't see things as good or bad. I see things as painful or soothing. Those are realities, and I do believe in the whole yin and yang. But I think in every moment of darkness, there's a flicker of light, and I think in every streaming light, there's a potential flicker of darkness in there as well. There can't be one without the other. But I don't see it as good or bad, as much as I think it as humans, I think we're always trying to lean towards comfort, trying to lean towards nourishment. But a lot of times we do really stupid things. A lot of times hormones and chemicals get the best of us. There are behaviors and stupid things that certainly politicians say on a daily basis. But guess what? When I'm judging them, it's oh, I've never said anything stupid. I'll probably say 10 things stupid today, at least 10 things stupid today. So, it's Jesus said, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And so I think, as long as we recognize we're all mortal, we're all human, and let's all make a commitment to be a little bit better than we were at some point in the past.
Do you ever get surprised?
Do I ever get surprised? Yeah, sure. A lot of people say, oh, I have no expectations. I've got a lot of expectations. If I'll show up at there hasn't been a lot to do other than going to supermarkets over the last several months. But, I go to the supermarket and I'm like, wow, more crowded than I thought. Oh, wow, emptier than I thought. I live in really a place where it's sunny. I'm not trying to rub it in.
We have the sun here as well. I mean, that's one thing. It has been really fantastic.
I live in a place where and how about this? After you've been cooped up, sealed in your house, or your apartment, your flat for the last 90 days, even if it's pouring outside, you're gonna run in the rain and dance and scream and be so happy. So it's so funny that normally we would say it's another raining British day, but it's no, it's a day that I can go outside of my house, so we can gratitude for small favors. But yeah, I get surprised all the time. I have expectations, and when they're met, I make sure, because when we have expectations and they're not met, typically what we do is we beat ourselves up. You know, I coulda, woulda, shoulda done this thing. I should have done that, or I should have done this, and we go back into the past. But we don't give ourselves like pats on the back. We don't hold a parade for ourselves when it's like, I've guess what? I had this expectation. I did this thing, and it worked so brilliantly. You know, what we say to ourselves is, "Well, of course it worked. It was supposed to work." And then we like move on to the next thing, instead of saying, "Whoa, wait a second. Take some time now and celebrate that you did some." You know, if you're going to beat yourself up for the downside, for your mistakes, then how about celebrating the stuff that you planned well, or did right, or leaned harder into? So I think, yeah, I get surprised constantly, and I think that's, you know, it's in the uncertain,
Yeah.
in the surprise,
Yeah.
where the miracles of life are. You know, that's the rich, that's the unconditioned, that's the and it's not always it's not always an upside surprise,
Yeah.
but certainly if you're willing to get a little vulnerable, because most people are not willing to get emotionally open to risk, to go on the record that like, well, here's what I'm hoping for. They keep that small in case it doesn't work out, so then no one can say that they were a fool. But but those moments when you go like, here's what I'm hoping for, and when it happens, like, we should just celebrate those moments.
Definitely. Now, I'm looking at your T-shirt. You've got an amazing T-shirt with the on sign on it. Thank you very much. That needs to be shown off to everyone. Oh, and I see all your lovely tattoos as well, Davidji.
Hey, can you see? Hey, is my shirt right side up or backwards?
No, it's the right. It's the right side. Yeah, it's the right side. Yeah,
It's right side. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. I wasn't sure because another feature on Zoom is you can mirror your screen, so you
Okay.
could look at yourself.
Right, that's good, because
Yeah.
actually I was, when this first all happened, the first 2 weeks, I was putting tutorials on every day, and I was using a flip chart, and everyone was sending me messages saying, I can't read the writing, Sunita, and I never figured it out. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Just go into preferences, and there's
Okay.
like video, and
Yeah.
you click on that, and it says mirror screen or not.
Okay.
So
Great. Good. Now you have it's a diamond shaped Superman symbol, and it captures this east meets west approach. So just finally, what does that mean to you? What does that shirt mean to you?
all right. So this symbol here is an ohm, which represents this part here. Is the akara, or our waking state. It's the state we're in right now. It's the state we're in most of the time. The top little line here, this is known as the makara. That's our state of deep sleep. And this line that comes through the middle here to create this little thing. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to do it backwards here. That is the ukara, which is our dream state. So the akara, the ukara, and the makara, and that's how we get the vibration aum, which that's first referenced in the Rig Veda, the oldest book on the planet, 7,000 years ago. So that's the vibration that contains every vibration that could ever exist, and it's really addressing our three states of consciousness that we have in every moment. We're either awake, we're asleep, and we're dreaming. Waking state, we're fully aware. We would assume this is reality. We don't know, but we would assume it is. And our state of deep sleep is actually a state of restful dullness, where we're rejuvenating our mind and our body. And then that dream state, while you're in it, you think it's real, but then you wake up and you go, oh, it was just a dream. So then right above that, this is the symbol for sort of like the line between those three states and the fourth state of consciousness, transcendent consciousness. Some people say this line here is Maya, which is the illusion between this world and whatever's out there. Some people say this actually is that fourth state called Turiya. That's like, and that's the state that we experience for flickers when we meditate. That's the state that we experience when we raise our vibration on a consistent basis. And that little dot on the top is known as the bindu, and that dot, the smallest possible dot, actually means the entire universe. So you have the waking state, the dream state, the sleeping state, the fourth state, transcendent consciousness, and whoop, the Bindu, the universe. So for me, that means whispers in my ear are wholeness. This represents the fact that we're all whole. This is almost like, for me, this is saying namaste. I'm neither above nor below anybody else. And I honor that divine light in you that's also in me. And when you're in that state and I'm in that state, we are one. I could call it like my aham brahmasmi, symbol, sort of. I am the universe, and the universe is in me. And this little sort of like surround, sort of like a Superman emblem. So for me, so I call it the Super Om. And so for me, this represents, the fact that we all have this superpower. With this superpower to be whole, the superpower that we are Aham Brahmasmi, we are the universe. And if you sort of like don't know what it is, a lot of people go like, what is that? A Superman thing? But if you are, study yoga or Vedanta or meditation or Ayurveda or any of these, ancient wisdom traditions, you sort of like know, it's an Om. So I believe that those who meditate are mutants. If you've ever seen any of the X-Men movies, they're all like mutants with like superpowers. And those of us who meditate, we have a superpower. That is the power of presence. And in any moment, we can bust out connecting to the present moment. Rather than being in the past, rather than being in the future, rather than being in fear, rather than being in anxiety, this is the reminder. Come back home to who you are, which is whole and perfect and pure.
Davidji, how do we have a Davidji experience right now? What's happening? Tell us.
Well, here's something else that I've learned. For the past 10 years, since I left the Chopra Center, I've been, traveling around. I was up in, hanging out with you and your posse up in that neck of the woods. I remember that beautiful train ride from London. Up to Manchester and up to really the Nottingham world, and that was just that was beautiful. And I've been doing that probably every 3 days for the last 10 years. And so suddenly in the last 4 months, like all that's been taken off the table, and so I've launched a whole bunch of virtual courses, even my meditation teacher training course, the Masters of Wisdom and Meditation teacher training, which I had resisted for 7 years. I was like, no, it's always been 15 weeks online and then a final week in residence with me here in California. And I said, you know what, I need to get over it. I need to get past my own little dogma and past my own little rigidity. So I've just launched full-on 15 weeks online, and then that 16th week is a virtual in residence. So, from crack of dawn to, throughout the day, that final week, instead of hanging out with me here. So I've just announced that and launched that out. That starts on June 28th, and then it rolls for 16 weeks. So people could be in their pajamas for the whole experience, if you wanted to, for the whole experience. And next week, I'm launching a Sacred Powers 5-week course based on my last book, Sacred Powers, where twice a week I'll go deep into the 5 divine principles of oneness, of awareness, of rebirth, of infinite flow, of inner fire, to really help people who, like right now, might be at a crossroads. Or right now, maybe they're at a fork in the road and they don't really know which way to turn, or they just want to deepen their spiritual connection. So that's going to be all on Zoom. So I'm really excited. I'll probably be sitting right here in my little tree house for all of these new courses and trainings, and I hope to continue to do that because I've gotten pretty comfortable.
You're not comfortable. It's perfect. It's perfect. Completely perfect. And how do people? So do they just go straight to your website?
Yeah, you can visit davidji.com, davidji.com, for events or for teacher trainings and things like that. You can also follow me on Instagram at Davidji Meditation, and on my Instagram, if you click on my link in my profile, in my bio there, it'll take you to like any of these things, because I have a whole bunch of other courses. I have free courses that we're offering. I have online, on demand, at your own pace, and so I'm trying to always trying to meet people where they are. And if you're in your pajamas, sitting in or your solarium, or wherever you are, or trapped in your closet, hopefully we can connect through these teachings. And I've got over 1,000 free guided meditations on everywhere, from Apple Music to Insight Timer to Spotify and on my own site as well. So I would encourage people. So when people say, like, you don't understand, I have kids, or you don't understand, I'm a homeschooler now, or you don't, it's like, we all are pretty busy, but everybody's got at least 15 minutes to close their eyes and be a better version of themselves and meditate. So
amazing. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for telling us how
Sunita.
to let go of everything that's going on around us. And thank you. So great. And we'll put all those links in the video when we send it out.
Well, thank you. And I I always want to give you a shout out, and so don't be embarrassed. But you are such a powerful force of healing and serving and helping people. And again, you're virtual, so it's not just in Sherwood Forest.
No.
But it's the entire planet Earth. So thank you so much for the work that you do, and for inviting me to hang out with you.
Thank you so much.